the mid-1980s and gazetted officially from 1989 as ethnic districts. So we know we can rattle off the names, right? Little India, Chinatown, Ugla, each of which are supposed to be affiliated to some group. And then there are actually, these portions that are in between these districts that have been gazetted and demarcated and promoted that are out of the picture. They are not necessarily completely gone, the old buildings in these districts that have not been demarcated and promoted. And we're going to look at some of these districts that are left out of the frame. We're also going to look at the diversity within the areas that have been framed. So basically, if we look at these maps, this is actually taken from a school textbook. So this is what we teach our younger generation. We tell them that our districts that have to do with conservation areas and historic conservation areas are Emerald Hill, Little India, Kampong Glam, the Singapore River area, including the area around, what is this called, Armenian Street, for example. Danfern's former bookshop is there. And then within these areas, these are the kinds of maps that are produced with some of the religious places of worship. Places of worship. I would like to start with what I call the power of our CMIO framing in terms of what it looks like in our, not just the physical landscape, but our mental landscape. So I list here a few things, right? I list here a few things that don't actually make it into the list that we saw earlier. So Kampung Serani, for example. I won't look at whole Singapore town. Usually I do, but today I cut it out because of lack of time. There's a place called Kampung Melaka and all the old maps. There was also a place called Malay Town. Where is that? It's not Kampung Melaka. It's at Tanjung Magapang Road. The Bugis Town, Chulia Kampung, and Kling and Chulia Street, and so on. I often ask people whether they are aware, just as an experiment, that there is a Portuguese Eurasian church in Singapore. And sometimes there will be this question, where? I never knew there was such a thing. And then I would say, it's in front of the National Library. And the reason why people have forgotten about it, or not forgotten, don't notice it maybe, is that we don't frame it as a heritage district. Ironically, of course, in the past, even the Chinese would refer to this in dialect as Kampung Serani. We'll come to that later. So they knew this was Kampung Serani. Serani, of course, is the Malay way of talking about the Eurasians. It's actually Nazarene, so it's glossed as Serani. So that's the power of whether or not we have framed it officially and whether we become aware of something, whether something is celebrated as part of the cultural landscape. So, of course, that would be here. Kampung Serani, Manila Street, Victoria Street. In the dialects, as I mentioned, both Manila Street and Victoria Street are called Serani Street. And then there's also Kampung Lobi. At the end of this talk, we'll look at all of these names in dialect and in Tamil. We'll also be looking at how in Tamil these were the names referred to. These are the Malay names, and they were referred to this exactly in the same way in Tamil and various dialects. We'll also be looking at, as I mentioned just now, High Street, Chulia Kampung, Malacca, and so on. So these areas in red are the ones that are left out of frame. And in the sense, I would call them places that have been discarded. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we'll also be looking at what's been racially framed. We frame these areas, right? And then, I won't be talking about Little India tonight. I will only be talking about mostly what we've called Chinatown and the area that we have demarcated as Kampung Glam. So I'll begin by looking at the term kampung and its derivatives, kampung and compound. And of course, that's looking at urban form, but also that it manifests itself in architectural form. So if we look at the Jackson plan, we will notice that the term kampung is used. We have Chinese kampung, Chulia kampung, Arab kampung, and Bugis kampung. Right again, after what this area is today demarcated as Kampung Glam. This area, if you extend this road, it says here road leading across the island, that's actually going to be Serangoon Road. This is Seligi, and it goes on to Serangoon Road. And so this is Park Lane Mall and so on. So this extends to, and then this is Jalan Besar. And then this is Rocho River. So Tekka is here. not yet built, not yet shown, not indicated yet in this particular map. But what you notice is this is actually a colonial town plan. It's an intent to develop Singapore in 1822. It doesn't show what was actually there, but it shows the intention to reorganize the various places. We look at some maps following this slide that show the actual situation at that time. And you realize why is the term kampung used? If kampung means villages, we understand it today. But there's something more to that term. This is where the conservation districts lie today. So it kind of tells us what has been committed. So I'll dwell at length later on the areas that have been omitted, particularly in this area called subsequent. Another way to kind of question the way we look at the city, not just by the term kampung and how we understand or misunderstand it, has to do with how we have alternative colloquial names that we have discarded or disregarded. So some of you might have again heard me talking about this. We'll go through these at the end of the talk tonight, but if you just take a quick look, there's something encoded in the dialect names. In this case, it's a Hokkien, and the Malay names that seem to be missed out in the English names that we use officially, and that we kind of use to actually frame the areas officially. So this is supposed to be Arab. So we have done various things to promote this as an Arab heritage area, but actually locals call it a different name. Particularly, of course, Chinatown. Nobody in Singapore calls it Tangren, whatever Chinese town. And we instead call it Chachui and so on. So it has to do with what we call it ourselves. The term kampung also appears in all the colonial maps for areas that are not villages. So these are actually areas of shophouses. That's Kampung Bengkulu, also called Kampung Bengkulu in Chinese dialects. The Kampung Glam extends beyond Arab Street and Jalan Sultan. This is the area framed today as Kampung Glam Street. It goes all the way out to Middle Road. Rocho Road. Ophir Road is the new road here. So if you're familiar with the roads, this is Middle Road. So it extends all the way here. And then there's another name, Kampung Rocho, for the area beyond Jalan Sultan all the way to Crawford. Again, if you look at another map, the term kampung being used, the ones that I put in square brackets means that they are used to indicate these areas but not shown on this particular map. You can find them on other maps, but this is a consolidation. So there's Kampung Bugis, Kampung Kapo. Kampung Kapo is still there, of course. There's Kampung Kapo Road and the Kampung Kapo Methodist Church, Peranakan Church. So, and a few other areas, Kampung Java. So if you also notice that sometimes the same area is called by two different names. Here it's called Kampung Rocho, the same area here is called Kampung Java, because there is a Java Road. So it's a bit confusing because different places can get called the same name as Kampung. And if you look at this 1905 reference by Horton, there's an interesting remark or observation. It says Malays take a little notice of streets and as a rule describe places by kampungs, which are all well known. So that's in 1905. Apparently in 1905 such a phenomenon is well known. And of course we start to wonder what is going on. This term kampung, as I mentioned, is more to it than what we understand it today. The way we understand it today is a bit restricted. But if we look at it historically, for example, in the Jackson plan earlier, kampung refers to an urban district, from which we also get the English word compounding, the second meaning of the term. So the word compound has two meanings, and this is the second one. So in the second one, where it refers to the morphological unit of physical space, then it actually derives etymologically, ultimately, from the Malay term kampung. And there's also, of course, this original spelling in English. It's been adopted in 3 different forms. This is obsolete, of course. You can only find it in old maps. But more importantly, it's also expressed in architectural terms. So we know the kampung house. This is one kind of kampung house. There are many different models and variations. But in this particular one, the floor is raised very high. It's a full story height, not commonly found in Singapore and Johor. This is more in Pahang or Perak, where the floor is raised so high. But this is a good example. It was built in Singapore at Pahang Street. So not surprising, maybe it is a Pahang person. It's a good example to compare with the compound house. So compound house is where the ground floor, the raised floor of the kampung house is walled in and usually built in brick. Then you get this. So we are quite familiar with compound houses in Singapore and in Malacca, and for example this is from Geylang Road. So you can compare the kampung house and compound house. Now I'm using this example because Very often, we refer to architecture through racialized lenses too, as though these forms were not shared across ethnic groups in Singapore. We forget. And then the term kampung is also reduced to one particular meaning, and that is kind of rural ideal. So today we have this nostalgia for kampung spirit, by which we mean a kind of village atmosphere. So we have reduced the complexity of the term, and we have also restricted our understanding of what a kampung house really meant. These are strange ways by which we kind of we celebrate the heritage, but in ways that actually reduce its meaning. So it's kind of doubly ironic. So another example, so if you look at many of the floor plans submitted to the British municipalities in the 19th century and early 20th century, you will find, for example, this is 6 compound houses. So the term was officially used to refer to this type of house, the compound house, where the kampung house is raised and the ground floor is used. So, and what is important to note in these houses is that it is the upper floor that is the main house. The lower floor is always ancillary, subsidiary space, like storage spaces. So if you have guests, they are brought upstairs. They don't remain on the ground floor. The ground floor is really secondary space, like you would experience for the kolong of the Malay house. You don't use the downstairs space to entertain guests. So in that sense, that old spatial reckoning, if you like, is preserved. So here you can see the stairs going up. And in this case, it's quite interesting because the 2 bedrooms at the back, upstairs going directly down to the bathrooms at the back. So this is quite interesting. We built 6 in a row at Jalan Sultan. The interesting thing to also note is that we only celebrate the shop house as our urban heritage more than we do the compound house or the kampung house in the city, when actually they coexisted all along. And if you look at the way the city was subdivided as plots, you can see that here these are the compounds with the houses shown as little black squares. And sometimes, like in the image we saw earlier, this one, the compound of the compound house is slowly subdivided and around it shop houses are built. So eventually you might even demolish the compound house because of land pressure, then everything becomes a shop house. So for example, if you go to certain areas like the Kampung Bengkulu and Bencoolen Street, Kampung Serani Marina Street area, you will find, this is Waterloo Street to be exact, you will find combinations of the two. And even the synagogue in this case is built as a compound house type rather than the type. So when I talk about the fragmented remnants of the city, I'm also concerned with the kind of exclusionary narratives that result from it. Maybe I just look at the examples to explain what I mean by that. If we remember that first slide we saw, the purple area labeled Emerald Hill, we know there is a play on Emerald Hill that emphasizes the Peranakan identity. We also have the ethnic tag, Peranakan Place. So today it's been renovated. You know there's this Orchard Gateway, and then this whole area has been renovated. The Peranakan Place is on display as a name at the entrance, just like that. So it's still restored. So it's still called Peranakan Place in place of Emerald Hill. So the thing to note is that shop houses existed all along Orchard Road, not just in this stretch. We have chosen an ethnic label for one particular area. And so we're forgetting all of this. There were compound houses for Chinese clients who are not necessarily Peranakan, and Arab client. You also have a compound house here from Meikai by the Chinese architect Gabriel Timo. We have here shop houses, but these are compound houses. They have a front yard. I think you'll be familiar with some examples where you enter a front yard and before you enter the townhouse. So these are actually, but they're labeled 3 compound houses, or compound shop houses actually. That's how it's written. It's 3 compounds. So it's an amalgamation of the 2 building types. For G.A. Fernandez, and so on, and so an Arab client. It's very much a multi-ethnic area as well, Orchard Road. Muhammad Ali, Killiney Road, 1907. I think you get the picture. Orchard Road, here's Manasseh. We know this Manasseh Mayor. Famous, I mean, here's the mayor buildings, right? Near Dhoby Ghaut, Chakan, of course. But you get the sense of what I'm talking about. So we have framed, Orchard, if we understand it, that's Emerald Hill. So it's about what has been discarded and what has been privileged and as our ethnic heritage. So again, coming back to this map, showing you the blue areas which are today demarcated as racialized districts and how much, the gaping holes, so what's actually in between all of this. So let's come to one example. So if you look again, if you look again at this, we are looking at this area here, because these are the blue patches that are today promoted as part of Chinatown district. And then, and this is the portion north of it. So actually, Chinatown district starts here. Here. Starts here, this line, cross street, south of it. So there's this part. You notice a lot of things. For time's sake, I'll just quickly point out. Plain Chapel without elaborating. Chulia Kampong, Chulia Street, which is today not called Chulia Street shifts here, so this arrow here. Chulia Street is now here near the mouth of the Singapore River, where UOE is. Chulia Street today, this is actually Yu Tong Sen Street. And Chulia Street, so there's the bridge. This is the first bridge of Elgin Bridge, South Bridge Road. And so on, so you see the fishing village with lime kilns. You go to the next map, exactly. I tried to place it as exactly overlapping as possible. Chinatown is labeled here. Nothing about Chulia Kampong here, but you get Malay Town. That's very intriguing. If you look back, that was this lime kiln and fishing village. It's written in the next map as Malay Town. In the following map, Malay Town seems to disappear, but Kampong Melaka returns. And everybody knows we are actually in the area called Kampong Melaka. This area is called North Kampong Melaka if you look at the old maps. This is North Kampong Melaka, this is South Kampong Melaka. South Kampong Melaka is Alundra Market area. And Kling Street appears here. It's a bit too difficult to see in this low resolution map, but here's Kling Street. So Kling Street did not appear here. This became New Bridge Road. It's now down there. There you go. So that's Kampong Melaka, and that's Malay Town if you look at the 1981 map, and Chulia Street is here. There is, of course, now this mosque has gone underground in the basement of UOB Tower. So there's still the Chulia Mosque. Maulana Muhammad Ali Mosque, yeah, it's still there. So it's Chulia Street, the Chulia Traders. Malay Town still has the Hakka Temple. So one thing I want to emphasize is when you have all these kampung names, town names with a particular ethnic appellation or label, it doesn't necessarily mean it's mono-ethnic. It's usually mixed. So Malay Town has a very old Hakka Temple, as well as the Habib Noor Mausoleum and the Haji Muhammad Salihu. So if you are at this white car and looking this way, you will see the Hakka Temple. Hakka Temple is older than this two, but it was labeled on maps as Malay Town. So it's multi-ethnic, even though it's called Malay Town. And it's got an interesting history as well. All the three buildings have an interesting history, which, because of lack of time, I won't go through. So some more, images of Malay Town. So for example, this is a house built for Haji Latif in the form of a shop house. If you go to Kampong Melaka, the other side, we are North Kampong Melaka. This is South Kampong Melaka. MOM building behind it. MOM building was built and then blocked this Umar Mosque. So Umar Mosque is touted as the earliest mosque to be built in colonial Singapore. Around it, there used to be two roads called Omar Road and Mosque Square, both of which have been demolished for MOM building. And all the shop houses surrounding it also disappeared. Chulia Kampong is now Kling Street, Chulia Street. Kling Street has been renamed Chulia Street. These are all the Chulias. You can see the names on these shop signs. Because we're talking about the CBD area. So are these ethnic heritage districts? Of course, they're not about as such. There's High Street. High Street too. I mean, we are accustomed to looking at High Street as civic district, Parliament House, and so on, right? Yeah. Where ACM is. But this used to be where, for example, Syed Muhammad Al-Sabah built this shop house with a dome and a crescent moon. At the corner, can you imagine? This is actually at Hunan Centre's entrance today. So this shop house was there. Go to the next. Again, another shop house, a pair of shop houses, 3 stories high by Al-Sabah again. And then you have a North Indian company owned by North Indians. And many more, just showing one example. There are many more. First, if you're familiar with High Street Plaza, then you wouldn't be surprised by this. They actually relocated, just like how Bras-Basah Complex is a relocated spurs of Bras-Basah area, shop houses, before they were demolished. And you will find people of, this is going to sound ridiculous, you'll find people of the unexpected race in unexpected places. It sounds ridiculous, but that's how we look at this. this. I mean, here is Encik Manak, a Malay guy, who built 3 shophouses built by R.C. Norris at Albert Street. What's he doing there? According to our frame of mind, right? Because we see, you know, Malays are all at Kampung Glam and live in some village or another. You know, we have this kind of strange, that's how we look at ourselves, that we have this kind of othering. The area that has the biggest, again I have to move very quickly, the area that has the biggest loss is the one that appeared in Jacksonville as Bugis Kampung. Initially it was Bugis Town on the other side. They were asked to move by Raffles in 1822 to the other side to make way for the new European town. So after they were relocated, and this is supposed to be a new European town as opposed to Bugis Town here, and then new Bugis Kampung over there with an Arab Kampung in between. That's today Arab Street. That was the intention. But as we know, Arab Street is called Java Street, okay, as I showed you earlier. So this is after people were moved, the Bugis were moved to the other side of what is today Kampung Glam district, with the palace here. So they were moved across, so the new Bugis town took place here. Kampung Glam is still the name for the other side, and then this was not Kampung Glam. If you look at some maps, it's called Kampung Sultan, or Kampung Dalam. What we today call Kampung Glam district is just one small part. The full view, so Bugis town, Kampung Glam is on this side, this is the Sultan's house, and so on. It's Kampung China. That's interesting because in this map there's a mix of terms used. You use town for the Bugis town, and then you use Kampong for the Kampung China, not Chinatown. So the terms were interchangeable. That's what I'm trying to show here. This map really shows it quite clearly. The terms were interchangeable, they meant the same thing. But today, of course, we use Kampong in imagination, or one particular kind of collective memory, like. So this is what was designated as Bugis Kampong looked like. What is significant is if you look at the street names, they were all in Malay, unlike the rest of Singapore town at that time. And it's quite a substantial part of the built-up area of Singapore town in the first survey of 1829. This map is published twice, in slightly different form in 1836 and 1839. But what is significant, and if you know, of course, up to about 1850s, the Malay and Nusantara, or Malayo-Indonesian, if you like, component of Singapore town was 50%, and more initially, until it became 50%. So in those early decades of Singapore history, the Malay, and in this case, Bugis traders were very important for Singapore's survival. You know how the survival is not an issue, right? Or whether Singapore could survive or whether it would flounder as a newly founded form. So we often don't talk about this, the role of these Malayo-Nusantara traders in early Singapore, the early decades of Singapore. You look at the street names, you look at the size of it in relation to what has been developed elsewhere, and you know how important it is. One more clue has to do with the fact that there is a very important project, New Cut, in Old Channel, New Cut for Rochor River. If you look again, this is actually very early. It goes all the way up. If you trace it, this is the road that goes between Danin Road and Bukit Timah, all the way up to Bukit Timah Hill. So it was made into a canal very early because of the Bugis rails. Whereas Singapore River is still with its windy channel and marshland. So this part of Singapore is very often neglected. And worse than that, it's also completely demolished. And this whole area has been demolished. The whole area that I'm talking about has been demolished. Further maps to show its importance in terms of what it looks like on the navigation map. If you zoom in on this huge navigation map, you will see New Cut very prominently indicated. That corresponds, of course, to this New Cut we saw earlier, the one that goes all the way up to Bukit Timah. And then that Singapore River still in the marsh. We never talk about this. We never do. Because of the emphasis on how Singapore's importance lies in Singapore River, where the British traders are, or European traders, right? So that's sort of racialization of our history as well. And I like to use this example where this particular merchant, the Bugis merchant, actually paid for the project where ICA building is today. Behind it, where there's a pedestrian bridge, there was actually a repair for a retaining wall, or rather a retaining wall to be built because of the change in the course. So instead of this sharp turn, what happened was it was cut across. So today it's not such a sharp turn behind ICA. So it was actually Haji Mudalid and Kassandra's project to make it straight. A quick overview of who the Bugis were in Singapore history. Very early on, there was a trilingual dictionary including Bugis terms in both their own script. This is not Arabic script, this is Bugis script. And Bugis in Roman script and Malay, so translating 3 languages. a view we're not accustomed to seeing. We often have views of this for Singapore River. This is actually the harbour in front of Arab Street. Further views as late as 1975, the Bugis Traders. These are also from 1975. So we're talking about this area just now, Arab Street and then the pier at the end. And these areas have today been demolished, and only this yellow area is today called Kampung Glam. And then this is Little India, and then that is Kereta Air. That's what it looks like. If you look at the density of development here, it's pretty important compared to the rest of Singapore and how it's demolished. So this is what it looks like upon demolition, and then today. This is what it looks like today. Like that. So that's, yeah. So in case you were wondering, where are we talking about all this while? There it is. That's one of the most important early parts of Singapore. One of the most important. It's completely gone. Completely gone, except Hajar Fatimah Mosque. Can you even find it? It's there. I mean, it has a significant impact on the way we view the Malays and their role in Singapore. At some point it is. It's the most teruk. Kenal the most teruk. Nothing left except Hajar Fatimah Mosque. You don't even know its context. We don't even know its context. But it doesn't just stop there. In 1995, there were further demolitions. Again, it obscures the multi-ethnic diversity of what we understand as Malay identity in Singapore. If we quickly look at what was demolished, you have this Javanese mosque here, sorry, that's here. This one. It was demolished. So, to give you an idea of where it is, it's where the Park Lane, no, I'm sorry, not Park Lane, Parkview Square is with Blanco Court, some of you might remember. And then, of course, Golden Village. So, there it is, demolished. And of course, the Royal Theatre and the TV Theatre, two theatres that had Bangsawan plays. Baweanese Mosque. Fandi Ahmad is Baweanese. So this is the Baweanese Mosque. It's not in Kampung Glam, by the way. It's at Weld Road. Weld Road is on the way to Kampung Kapo or Little India side, on the way there. So people lived all over the place in that sense. The multi-ethnicity of the neighbourhoods. That's something that we kind of omit in the way we frame the race. And of course, one of the biggest losses is that this school was demolished in 1995 as well, Kota Raja School. I know that Mendaki appealed for this to be used as their headquarters in the 1980s. They were refused. And then in 1995 it was demolished. What was the reason? It's one of the most important schools in the history of Singapore, not just the history of the Malays. And it appears on our $2 note, that's the one. So we demolished it in 1995. What for? That's really scary. Yes, Victoria Bridge School and the Victoria School, and then it moved. So Victoria School building, the Art Deco building is still there. But this one was demolished, it's older. So it's really, really strange. And then of course, we also have these kinds of narratives for shop houses. I don't know whether you've seen this in HDB Hub. 1900s, genteel home for the merchant. 1950s, sticking slum tenements for the poor. And 2000s, elegant home and office for the trendy. So we are wonderful. So of course, HDB Hub has its own agenda, but it's to say that, thank goodness, we saved you from your stinking slums in the 50s. So this is 1980s, this is a stinking slum according to them, I guess. This is at Basra Street. And there was a joke back there, I don't think it's a stinking slum at all. So this is actually the family residence of the family of the chief Tadi of Singapore at one time. So this is along Basra Street. Today is a Basra Mall. You will see later how it's supposed to be Arab today. So Arab Street is Java Street. So in Malay it's Kampung Java, in Hokkien it's Java Khoi. So we often forget that because the name is Arab Street. What Java Road looks like, the area that was demolished, as I said, we don't even know the context of Hajar Fatimah Mosque. Actually, it looked like that. These shop houses, they don't have a 5-foot way, if you notice. Because these are very early model shop houses. So actually very significant. And Hajar Fatimah is actually of Bugis descent from Malacca. And if you go to Malacca, you will find this kind of shop house. The very early Dutch type shop houses without a 5-foot way. Of course, you might have heard of the term shop house Rafflesia, because in honor of the fact that Raffles is the one who came up with the 5-foot way ordinance. So then we have 5-foot way. Before that, there was no 5-foot way with that. It's the old Malacca one. Of course, again, the coexistence coexistence of compound houses and shop houses are next to each other. So these are the compound houses that you see, and then the shop houses line the street. This one is here, and then there's the mosque and the minaret. So we're looking from here. And of course, that's during the demolition of everything around the mosque. Close up of the Al-Sabah bungalows, and a view of what it looked like originally. And this is during the demolition of. This is not to show you how bad the shop houses were and what dilapidated state. This is demolition. It was being partially demolished, and it will go on easy. Frame, and so it's going to be slowly demolished. The other side has already been demolished. So that's one half of it. There's a huge area that was undergoing demolition. This is the, now, Bianco Yunus Abdullah, the first Malay municipal commissioner. The second one is somebody named Ambok Sulo. This is the father of Ambok Sulo. Shop houses, the residence, three shop houses consolidated as one residence, but built by the father of Ambok Sulo. If you look carefully at the plan, they are actually interconnected as one house upstairs. So it's one of those interesting townhouse plans. We often talk about townhouse as a Chinese thing, especially if you go to Malacca. But really, these are all shared forms. So if you go to Malacca, again, not just the shop houses, but the townhouses were originally Dutch. So this is the townhouse of Tan Ching Mok family in Malacca. The Tan Ching Mok family only acquired it in the 1870s and added Chinese-style additions. Before that, it was originally a 17th century Dutch townhouse. So we need to really review the way we associate certain built forms with certain race. Maybe I wouldn't be surprised if someone would say, oh, they built their townhouse like that because of Chinese influence. Well, really, is it Chinese influence or is it an older shared form brought, for example, by the Dutch in Malacca and Batavia and Batavia? Some more examples along areas that have been demolished: Java Road, Sumbawa Road, by Leo Lines. Here in this case is for Al-Sabah at Parliament Road, again demolished by architect Wan Nguyen. And so there's really, the multi-ethnic involvement in all these projects. Sometimes they're not even shop houses. They look like shop houses, but these are not actually shop and house. This is actually a coach house and horse stables. If you look at Minto Road next week is Sumbawa Road. The Bugis traders were bringing horses from Sumbawa. So horses of Sumbawa were known to be very fine horses. And of course, in those days, there was taxi. The coach was taxi. Well, today you might have noticed this along Sultan Road. This particular building is not really a shop house in that sense. It was originally a townhouse that was later used as a printing press. Again, its history is, I recall, they were actually not sure who built it. The assumption was this must be Peranakan because of the so-called Peranakan tiles. And actually, it has to do with a Banjar merchant, Malay merchants from Banjarmasin. And if you look at the plan, it's really quite unique. And so is the case with this particular example along Jalan Sultan. Unfortunately, it's Hotel 81 Heritage. Originally built by the Al-Sabahs. But really quite unique. So the shop house form is flexible and shared, and many different forms could be built from it. So in this, now, we are going to move from shop houses to the kampung houses. So we are looking at here Kampung Bugis. And I think you notice I'm showing the hook. So that hook is a very, very old feature in Singapore. And if you notice now, here, there are these houses built over the water and they are each numbered. So at the very tip were these cluster of houses. And boats, sea-going boats were more directly to these houses. You know what kind of boats these are, parent to these evictions. But guess what? This image is used at the URA display panel to depict fishing village. So this is what I'm talking about. Shop houses on high. We talk about kampung houses, Malays, therefore fishing village. And actually this was the house of traders who put more, and not these ships, but actually the Bugis Palari. So we have done all of this when in fact there's really a lot of diversity. We look at ourselves through othering lenses. We signify ourselves. You would have heard of scholars talking about the re-signification of Singapore society. When in what is actually promoted as Chinatown, you have all these places of non-Chinese places of worship that don't really come. There are more non-Chinese places of worship than there are Chinese places of worship in Chinatown. What are we to make of that? Why do we even want to promote it purely as Chinatown? Where are we going to put all of these buildings there? Just ignore them? So this is what I mean by the exclusionary narrative. Why do we even have to do this? We don't even call it Chinatown originally, it was neutral trade. And it's not, I'm not the first to say this. Singapore Heritage Society already tried to push this point. But I guess to no avail. The rethinking Chinatown thing didn't really happen. You know, part of rethinking Chinatown is to rediscover our multi-ethnic, collaborative past. For example, this whole term, Panggung Wayang and Chinese opera stage, and so on. So I was talking earlier about how, you know, if you go to Kampung Glam, we have Arabized it, so this is the example. Simply because we see this when actually originally it was this Javanese form. So I will conclude by talking about how perhaps, you know, maybe suggest some ways we can recall this multicultural past that I've been talking about, and to relook at the city as an urban mosaic. I mentioned that I will conclude with this. These are some of the terms that were used. Albert Street was called Kampung Mangkulu, which is Kampung Mangkulu in dialect. Angus Street, Kampung Malaka. Canal, Kampung Malaka, the street, Kang. Hong Lim Kee is actually Kampung Malaka, and so on. Buffalo Road is, in fact, not Kandang Kerbau. Actually, it seems it was called Kampung Kalabu, Kampung Kerbau. Stuff like that. The word pasar is used across. We know there is Lau Pasar and all that. Well, Clyde Terrace was Pasar Besi, right? Iron Market. Pasar is that. What is interesting is Cross Street is called Street of Milk Shops in Tamil and also Kampung Susu, which means the same thing. Victoria Street, one part of it, was called Pal Kampang. Kampang is the Tamil pronunciation of Kampung. Kampung Susu, in other words. Balestier Road, Tanir Kampang, Water Kampung. Queen Street, Dobi Kampang, Kampung Dobi. Victoria Street, Boyan Kampang, Kampung Boyan Lama. There's a few more. Jawa, yeah, so you know, Kampung Tembaga is called Javanese Copper Smith Street. It's a cross street. Today, this is called Baghdad Street. Arab Street, Jawa Koi. Manila Street, Sekiani Koi. Sekiani is Rani. Havelock, Masa Arak Sarat. In Malay, it's Jalan Masa Arak. It was transliterated into Tamil. You know? And then, of course, I was talking about mapping the diversity. If you just map the diversity, it's so immense. And yet, we just call this Kampung Glam and India. I mean, look at the diversity. We have Engkwa Church, straight Chinese church, and so on, Tamil Methodist Church. And the last slide, this one. We've already seen this. So I think to conclude, there's really something very strange about the way we celebrate our cultural diversity by actually restricting it. It's the greatest irony we can do to each other, and that's the worst myth we can perpetuate.